Let's talk names here, Brian. We'll start with Michael Terry III. We will get to a couple of others as well, several of the five-star variety. But the reason I want to start with Michael Terry III is Oregon, without Brame, who flipped to Tennessee, doesn't have a tight end commit in the class of 2025. When you look at the offer list they have at this position, everyone else is pretty solidly committed, it appears. A guy like Caleb Edwards, who went to Alabama. But Terry is someone who could play tight end or serve as that position group here in the 2025 cycle. What is the latest on the Five Stars recruitment?
That kid has made the rounds, and it just sounds like he can't make up his mind to me, or he's just great at speaking to the media. Nebraska, Oregon, Texas. I have no idea where that kid's going. I've read more about him than almost any other five-star kid in the last 2 weeks. No clue. But everybody wants him. I keep hearing running back. Like that's a big kid. Like, I mean, he's a great athlete. He could probably play linebacker and all kinds of stuff. But I get the idea of getting the ball. But he's going to be a big boy. So I don't know, man. He's been to see the Ducks. He's been to see Nebraska. He's been to see Texas recently. You tell me. I think he understands how to play the violin to the media and keep them happy.
Oregon, Nebraska, Texas. How big of a factor do you think NIL is here? Because those are three schools that can certainly offer a decent chunk of change.
Humongous. That's why they're in it. Now, though, because of what you said, here's the key. At some point, it's still about relationships. It's always about relationships. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that Nebraska offers him $50,000 more than what Texas or Oregon does. Whatever. Are you really going to make a decision just on that when there's hundreds of thousands of dollars involved here? That would be kind of weird. He's probably still going to pick a school that he feels like he can make a difference. Maybe he wants to be the upstart at Nebraska. Wouldn't shock me. That's happened before. But then he could just want to be closer to mom. It's impossible. But it'll still be relationships to figure it out. I know that NIL with all those schools, is humongous, though.
Does he have a timeline or a commitment date, or not yet?
I've heard that he would like to have it done fairly soon, like beginning of the season. But I haven't.
Beginning of the high school season or the college season?
Like,
or are they around the same time?
Well, high school and tech, mid like August 15th, August 20th, so it's a little closer.
Okay. That's a name to watch, but one who has tweeted out from his personal account, so we're going to go with this should be a solid commitment date, we hope, is Trey McNutt, five-star defensive back, probably projects as a safety, committing on Saturday. Who's in play here, and how good of a chance does Oregon have?
Oregon is the team that's been trending, but I'm just going to say this again for the record. Kids from the Cleveland area don't go to Oregon. It's been a really weird year. But even the person I spoke to recently that runs Locked On Buckeyes says he's here at Oregon too. Like, it's just bizarre. When I was a kid, they never got a kid to visit from the state of Ohio. Oregon has done a great job, man. They really have. And it's not like Ohio State doesn't want him. So to beat them for an in-state kid that they want, like Cleveland is just deep red. Like that is Ohio State turf. So that would be a coup for Dan Lanning. And that's a good football player. The only thing I've heard is Oregon, even from an Ohio State person. What's that tell you?
That Oregon fans should be cautiously optimistic about Saturday, but don't get all your hopes invested in one kid's verbal commitment in early August. That is
sage advice.
That's probably the wisest advice that I could come up with here for Oregon fans. But next name that I want to discuss, speaking of Ohio State, Naim Offord. There has been buzz for, I think, months, at least weeks at this point. I feel like every time I go in to do a Google search, I'm getting a new article about Naim Offord could decommit, Naim Offord could. But it kind of reminds me of the Juju Lewis factor, who's the top quarterback in the class. He's committed to USC. Plenty of buzz. You and I have talked on Locked On College Football about, is he going to decommit from USC? Is he going to go to Auburn? Is he going to go to Colorado? He visited Indiana. And yet, here we are all this time later, and he's still committed to that same spot. What does that tell you?
He just visited Auburn for their Big Cat weekend. I mean, if he visits Auburn again, that's one thing. But if he visits Oregon, it's another because that's a distance. Follow the visits. That's always the case. And it's not a short flight from Birmingham to Portland, then drive on in to Eugene. So if he visits Oregon early in the season, you'll know where you stand. That's because they're trying to get him to come out. That's not in question. That's the key though. But I've spoken to people around Auburn. They still think Ohio State's the most likely. There's some that think Oregon's in play, and Auburn's the other. Bama's now trying really hard. Don't forget about them. His recruitment is hard to read. I'm going to go see him in a few weeks, and hopefully I have a better answer for you. But I'm not sure he knows, because he wouldn't be taking a visit to Auburn this past weekend if he wasn't open-minded.
Last year, the most high-profile recruit Oregon landed during the season was Aiden Breland. That was in October. Is that the same sort of timeline you think that that Offord is going to operate on in terms of choosing whether he's sticking with Ohio State or decommitting to go somewhere else?
October is probably the earliest, because Auburn's not going to give up on him regardless. They have 4 corners committed, and they're ardently recruiting him. What does that tell you? So he's an elite kid. That's an NFL player. It's a 3-and-out guy. He would start at most programs as a freshman. You got to recruit him. Somebody else decommits, it is what it is. They won't care. Same with Oregon. Yeah, I'd imagine that's going to be closer to signing day.
What about Jonah Williams, baseball player? That's been, reportedly a part of his recruitment. Wow. Hopefully he's gotten to know Coach Waz and likes him. Coach Waz has, of course, done a great job with the Oregon baseball program over the last couple of years. Williams is safety, linebacker. He's like a Jeff Bossa type. He could play either one throughout his career. But where does Williams' recruitment stand?
That one is a little more unique. The baseball thing you were smart to bring up. I don't know how to put stock in that, because everybody's different on how much they believe that's going to be the final factor. Because he might be the best pure hybrid safety in the country. You could at least make that argument. He could grow into a linebacker depending on your scheme. But, man, is he good. So the Ducks are right there. Texas schools, LSU. It depends on which site you're looking at to figure that out. And I haven't heard anybody pick a school with him that I trust. Now, I'm not talking about some random writer on some site that aggregates an article, but nobody I've spoken to is definitive. That's really far into recruitment for a 5-star kid. I don't know. LSU's gained a little momentum, allegedly, but does anybody want to play for that defense right now? I mean, they're terrible on defense. So,
well, that's why they brought in a new staff.
I know, but I don't know. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see how many of those kids are committed after about the 3rd or 4th game. I don't think they're going to be very good on defense again this year. But still, that's, Houston area kid. Baton Rouge is like 4 hours away, so I get it. But this is a kid that's really likes Oregon, and the baseball thing's a big part of it. They've got a legit baseball program now. So.
Yeah, they do. I mean, they've invested in it. They have recruited well. They've got plenty of talent. They get guys drafted all over the place. I think they just had 7 or 8 guys drafted into this year's draft. Bryce Betcher among them, but there were plenty of others. R.J. Gordon, Brock Moore. There were a bunch of guys and have been over the last couple of seasons. And real quick, it's Oregon, LSU, Texas A&M. Are there any other schools in the mix for Jonah Williams?
There's schools still trying all over, like Texas A&M, all those schools are trying. I don't really cap his number, because Georgia's always going to try. Follow the visits. Again, we're kind of starting a new recruiting cycle on September. Well, it's August 31st. That weekend, let's see where these kids go. Because Jonah can make a decision wherever he wants, whenever he wants, much to the chagrin of the coaches, but that's what 5-star kids get. So I think that the front runners are those schools you just mentioned, but that doesn't mean it's the end of the list.